I'd like to introduce some very interesting girls. When these two girls went to high school, they had this big issue. They wanted to become engineers, but there weren't any role models for them. So what began as a frustrated email exchange between two girls about Silicon Valley's gender gap is now becoming a national organization with 300 participants, where especially girls can learn how to code. So I'm very proud to present Aya Agarwal and Ellora Israni. Come on stage.
So I want to take a moment to walk you through your morning. I want you to think back to a couple hours ago when you were lying in your bed and you were blissfully asleep, and then your alarm clock went off. And maybe you switched on the light and you turned on the morning news.
And then, as of course, you pull out your cell phone. You see how many notifications you have and the 105 emails that you got while you were sleeping, and you respond to the important ones from your kids.
Then you got dressed, and maybe as you were getting dressed, you watched the morning news, and you saw an interesting story. So you found an article about it online, and you tweeted it.
So then this is my favorite part of the morning, breakfast time. You sit in the kitchen, and you maybe pull out your laptop or your tablet, and you pull up Skype so that you can call your kids in California who are in summer camp to say good evening to them. Then the cereal's all done. You put the security system on in your house. As you're walking out the door, you quickly send a text to your team to say that you're running a little bit late. You hop in the car, program your GPS to show where your next destination is, and you're off.
It's only 8:30 a.m., and you've already used 6 different computers.
We promise there's sound. We won't make you look at this without any sound. Sure. Okay, we'll come back to this, but basically what this video talks about is how computing is involved in every aspect of your life. Computing is so pervasive that oftentimes, even here at a digital life conference, we dismiss how much control it has over our lives. And then because we're so dismissive of it, we sometimes don't really think about what it takes to build these technologies and who are the people actually sitting in the companies creating them.
So think about the fact that computers have more control over your life than you're conscious of. And it's the people who can control computers, it's the people who understand how they work, who are going to be the most successful moving forward. And so we have to ask the question, why is it that women are the ones being excluded from this field?
Is the video working yet? No? Okay. So I want to share with you a couple of statistics. In the United States today, by 2020, only 30% of all of the US technical jobs will be able to be filled. And that means that there's a huge opportunity in this space. When there's unemployment rates that are reaching skyrocketing numbers, in the Eurozone, youth unemployment is hitting about 25%. There's this opportunity for excitement in this revolutionary field.
So, I'm going to ask you, if you consider yourself, if you are a mother, or you're a father, or you're an aunt, or you're an uncle, or you consider yourself a feminist in any sense, which I do, I think it should be remarkably scary to you that women are cutting themselves off from this opportunity. And so we have to ask, how can our generation, how can your generation, how can your daughter's generation learn how to program? And the answer is that we need to see more women doing it. We need to see more role models. You cannot be what you don't see.
So there are a couple of reasons that I'm going to talk about today that will explain to you why, number one, our future generation needs to learn how to code and why it's going to be valuable for them. And then number two, why you all here need to learn how to code. Number one, we're talking about an untapped potential. So I talked to you before that 30% of the US jobs are only going to be filled with engineers. That's a huge number by 2020. So that's a huge number for opportunity. Number two, women need to learn how to code because it's really important that they're able to insert their perspectives on applications and devices that we're using in our everyday lifestyle. When you're in an office and when you're in a meeting and you're building feature sets for these things, and they're only men offering their experiences, it's going to create a one-way world. And in a world where 50% of females are getting undergraduate degrees, it's really important that we're able to achieve that balance and diversity in other aspects of life as well. And then lastly, it's just a feminist issue. We need to be able to eradicate those barriers and make it a more equal society in a field that is relatively new. So that's why it's really important for our future generations to learn how to code. Why you guys need to learn how to code is because you guys are actually the role models. When we see a couple of the really apparent names, such as Marissa Mayer, Sheryl Sandberg, I'm sure you guys all know of them, it's really hard for Ellora and myself. We're Stanford students. We're about to graduate next year. And it's really hard for Ellora and myself to say, hey, I can be the CEO of this massive company. We need to sometimes realistically talk to people here who are relatable to us and who can tell us their stories. So it's important that as your careers and your fields are progressing and incorporating technology, you take that into account. So we can look forward and be like, okay, so we can pursue our interests and we can also talk to you guys about how you're incorporating it in companies. Secondly, it's just gonna simply make anything that you do, learning how to code is gonna simply make anything that you do better. If you're a media journalist or a fashionista, or trying to build sustainable solutions to help the environment. You might need to build a web newspaper, or you might need to build applications so people can track their energy usage in their house. Fundamentally, people are incorporating technology and interacting with them at such a high level. We used 6 devices this morning just before 8:30. So you learning how to code will help you manage your teams better, and it'll help you think more realistically about the potentials and possibility for products. So it's really important for role models and for you to be more effective in your jobs. So I want to quickly poll the audience here. We love user engagement, so we'd love to see, by a raise of hands, how many people here know how to code? Okay, it's a pretty good number. How many of you have written a full-fledged program before? You don't have to be engineers, but have written a program. Okay, there's a smattering of them in the audience.
So here's where we'd like to tell you our stories. Ina and I, we're 20 years old. We are students at Stanford University, and when we entered 3 years ago, we didn't intend to be engineers. I was a psychology major when I came in. I studied psychology for a year. Ina was pre-veterinary. We came in, and I took an engineering class because it was a general education requirement, and I ended up falling in love with it. I came to realize that whatever I wanted to do with my life, I was going to have a bigger impact on the world if technology was part of my toolkit. And so I took a leap of faith. I switched my major a year in, and I'm a computer science major at Stanford now, and I'm asking you to take the same leap of faith. We really do believe that everyone in this room and in this world, long term, should learn very basically how to program a computer.
So once again, you might be sitting here and we've given you the explanations. Yes, you guys need to know how to code. You need to help inspire the next generations. But I can probably imagine that you're saying, okay, well, you guys are a bunch of students. It's your job to learn. It's your job to take the time to invest 10 weeks to build a photo sharing application that's pretty similar to Facebook. It's your time and investment to do that. But we're all working. What do? I'm here to tell you that as a student and as being a part of the next generation, we're about to enter the beginning of our careers. And it's really difficult for us to look up to female leaders who are doing amazing things in this world, but aren't using technology in its forefront and aren't being leaders in the technical world. Because we know in 5 to 10 years, when the time comes for us to be influential in whatever our interests might be, technology is going to be so integrated in it that we're going to need to know how to use it. We're going to have to be very competent in that field in our careers. And we just want, honestly, more people like you who we can talk to and look up to, who are in big corporations or who are in small corporations, who are CEOs, and sharing their experiences of what it's like to code and manage programmers in their company.
So the great thing about learning technology today in 2013 is that in the past 2 years, technology education has been democratized. You or I or anyone in this world can go online. We can go to Coursera, we can go to Code Academy, we can go to Udacity, and we can teach ourselves to program. You can take a course in a day or a week, and you can learn the programming skills that you will need to do whatever your job is better. You can learn the programming skills that you will need to watch your daughters and your nieces learn how to program and take their classes and help them along. It really is much less difficult than it was even a couple years ago. The other thing is that as women learning to program, we're not just more computer scientists. We're what we like to call femgineers. Femgineers have not been coding since they were 2 years old. We are not hackers in the traditional sense. We've had experiences. We value human indecision as much as we value deterministic Turing machines. We want to marry life and love and laughter with the most groundbreaking technologies of today in helping make our world a better place, to be put simply. Anna and I never intended to be nerds, but we're doing what we can with it. Think of what a few more femgineers could do.
Maybe if there was a femgineer on Apple's Siri team, then in the first iteration of that product, it would be able, the personal assistant would have been able to tell you where the nearest center for you to be able to get birth control would be, rather than jokingly tell you where to bury a dead body. We need more femgineers to think about these things. So we're here to challenge the stereotype. We're here to say, you don't have to be one of those people wearing jeans in the office until odd hours of the night, holding energy drinks in your hand at all times of the day, coding. You can be a femgineer. You can bring your innovation and your vision and your well-rounded opinions and bring your human compassion to technology. Imagine a world with more femgineers. We're also both from the Silicon Valley. We go to school there and are surrounded by the 15-year-old CEOs, the disruption of everything and anything, and of course, Google Glass. And because of that, being in Europe and in Munich for the past couple of days, we're able to also realize that because every single one of you has different interests, and because you're exercising it so powerfully, that actually adds a lot more value to engineering and to technology than anyone in the Silicon Valley can add. It's because you have the global perspectives and you know what the greater world wants, you will be able to build greater technologies for a greater market.
But we know you might not just believe a couple of 20-year-olds standing up here, so we want to show you a couple of our role models who you will hopefully help with our argument.
People's lives revolve around tech. even if they don't even know it.
I would, maybe go on Facebook, I'd browse around the internet. It was just like computer science. Over time, I discovered the prereq class to almost everything I wanted to do was our introductory computer science class.
I took a CS class the spring of my sophomore year, and the part of me that loved to do logic puzzles and crossword puzzles just thrived on programming.
It keeps me intellectually stimulated every day, and I feel like I'm learning things on a day-to-day basis.
The most important things in computer science is logic and algorithmic thinking. And I think when you have that mindset, that can be applied to a stream of different disciplines, from science to engineering to business.
The majority of jobs today have a technology component. And so if you want to equip yourself to do almost anything, you need to add computer science to that very basic part of your toolkit.
With computing, just a little bit of programming knowledge suddenly unlocks all of these doors.
You can go into any industry. You can go into fashion, you can go into science, you can go into math.
And the fun part about computing is it's just such a broad discipline, because what we define as computer science is essentially finding problems that are worth solving and then solving them using computing.
So clearly this is a very exciting field to a lot of people. But the numbers show that women are lagging. They're lagging in this field, and we don't exactly know why.
So in the vein of think of what a few more femgineers could do, this is what a few more femgineers could do.
I think this is actually really a Rosie the Riveter moment, and that is that women are the great untapped bench. If you just look at the numbers, and they're super simple, let's say that women are 60% of undergraduates, they're 20% of computer science majors. Imagine a hypothetical computer science department with 100 students each year. At 20%, women are 20 of those, men are 80 of those. If we simply took women to their appropriate proportion of undergraduates, which is 60%, for every 40 men, there would be 60 women. For those 80 men, there would be 120 women. That would be 200 students, not 100. So if women were just represented proportionally, we would double the number of software engineers this nation is making every year, and that would be timely because the number of jobs is tripling.
So technology is more important than it ever was today. And if you still don't believe us, we did a little bit of research for you. We looked at Forbes's 2013 most powerful brands in the world. And of those top 10 brands, 8 of them were technical brands. There's clearly a need for more technologists, and that's the direction we're moving in. So I'd like to think we've made a pretty ironclad argument as to why we need more women in technology. There shouldn't be too many questions left there. And then the questions that we're left with are, why aren't there more women in technology? What is it about technology that is inherently unappealing to women?
I was terrified to take the introductory computer science class.
At least known by some as a weeder class, so it was a little bit more difficult.
The expectation was, if you're studying computer science, you must have used this before.
And there were some guys in the class who had just been programming all their lives, and I had not even touched a computer until 1998.
I thought I was failing that class the entire way through.
I spent a lot of time thinking that I just wasn't qualified for this. I hadn't been coding since I was 12. And my classmates, several of them had.
There's some very good statistics, some done here at Stanford, that show that when women don't succeed at first, they blame themselves, and men blame the course or the test. So that a woman who gets a B+ thinks she's doing horribly, and a man who gets a B+ thinks they're doing fine.
So through Ellora and my experiences, we realized that this was something that was our responsibility to take care of. 2 years ago, when we were sophomores in college, we founded a nonprofit organization called She++. This organization's mission is to help rebrand the image of the technologist, to enable more accessibility for all types of people in technology. We've gained support from some really awesome technologists such as Mark Andreessen, Sheryl Sandberg, Ariana Huffington, and more. And we've gained support from some of the biggest technical companies you know. We've done a lot of work in the past years to help build out this campaign and build out a community for young girls to feel welcome and to really talk about their experiences and to present them with the role models. We've run several conferences, and we facilitated mentorship programs between high school girls and college girls, just to ask the basic questions. What's it like to be a computer science major? What do you do on a day-to-day basis? What does a line of code, how does that translate to this? So we've done a lot of work, and most notably, we've built this documentary. It's a short documentary that's been screened in over 100 places in over 12 different countries and translated into 5 languages, including German, and it's been screened in Berlin here. We have some exciting news around that, which Ellora will tell you.
So this, as Ina said, this documentary has been screened over 100 times. And next week, on Monday, the 22nd, we're going to be releasing this to the public. So the clips you saw are part of a film that will be online on Vimeo for anyone to see and to watch and to share with your friends and your daughters and your nieces, and what we like to refer to as the next generation of good girls gone geek.
It's a very creative field, and it enables you to do so many different things.
And I think making all the choices that make you happy every day is probably the thing that'll get you closest to eventually recognizing your full potential.
They can affect the world very positively. They can build products that are used by millions of people.
And it's actually really dramatically changing the way the world functions.
You can have an idea or a concept, and you yourself can build it and make it a reality.
Like, it really is about making something that you're proud of and making something that, you know, you wanted to make and that was hard to make and that you did make. And I think that was kind of my proudest moment, because that was the first time I can really look back and be like, you know, I did that.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
My next guest don't have any hanging out time till September 22, because she is an advisor in the team of the election team of the candidate for chancellor for the Social Democratic Party. I'm very proud to have you here, Gesche Joost. So when it came to coding, you raised your hand. How did you learn coding?
I learned coding when I started studying. I started studying interface design in the mid-90s, and then the first thing that I did was learning HTML. And it was a very funny story, because one of our professors entered the lab and he was asking, you know, who knows coding? Who can program any websites? And a friend of mine and me were just raising our hands. Yeah, we might be able to code. We had no clue about coding at all. So we went to a bookshop and then bought HTML for beginners and then started coding.
Wow. And how did it work out?
It worked out very well. So we did a first website for Douglas, for example, for the perfumery, and then we did websites for Jill Sander and everything. So we just made our own office and started coding, because nobody knew coding at that time, and we just did it.
So do you think this is a future trend? Should children learn it in elementary school?
I think that's a very good idea. The good part is also when you now consider coding, maybe it doesn't have to be like that you have to code C++ or anything, but there's a kind of democratization of coding, because there are very handy tools now there. It's like a kind of Fisher technique kind of style. There are many tools that make it quite easy to code. And coding is power, so let's really go for that. So let's take all those tools that are available, and because they're really kind of easy drag and drop tools where you can create your own app, and we really should do it, because it really influences and changes the market and also the way how we can communicate together.
How do you address this in your work at a professor at the University of Arts in Berlin? Could you give us some example about it?
In my lab, it's the design research lab at the University of the Arts. We do a lot of human-computer interaction, how it is called. And there's one group of, we call them the hacker ladies. So there's just ladies. Wow. And they are doing interactive clothing. So they are knitting, but they are using conductive thread and microcontrollers. So the clothing that they are developing are interactive. So you can create an app, you have this interactive clothing, and you can do fun stuff with it. One example that we did is we did a jacket for stroke patients. Because stroke patients today have alarm systems at home. They have huge red alarm buttons that they should wear. In case of emergency, they could press them. But they don't wear it because it's clumsy and it looks ugly. So we thought to integrate it into a jacket, and we did this. So just a normal jacket with a microchip, and you, in an emergency situation, you just make a specific gesture like this. And this triggers an emergency call on your iPhone because it works with Bluetooth. So this is an example of integrating technology and coding into our everyday life and into our clothing.
Okay. I like it. So let's come back to your work as a politician. What's your opinion? How has the web changed political discourses?
Very much, and I see there high potential because there was a very good enquete commission working on the future of digital society, and they included a kind of one additional expert, and the additional expert was everybody using the platform of autocracy to take part in the dialogue. So this means that there are platforms that you can politically engage and participate in discourses, and this is just possible through the internet. And this changes the way of people can directly address issues, join dialogues on that, and really vote for something. There was a good example on net neutrality. So there was this e-petition thing. I don't know whether you saw this. There was a huge discussion about net neutrality. And there was an online petition where within like 4 days, there were 70,000 people signing for this online petition. There was a great success, and this is one of the examples where democracy is kind of redefined. So it's very direct, and people just jump in, they engage, and that's a very good opportunity.
As you also can see it with Occupy Gezi in Turkey, maybe the political power go in the hand of the protesters, and they are not so easily be censored. Is government losing power these times?
That's a very good question, and I think that kind of the traditional structures of government, they should be a bit afraid of what's happening there.
Afraid, okay.
Yeah, because it's really a big change that the power is going back to the hands of just people. So, for example, the Occupy Gezi movement, they organized their protests just amongst their social networks. And that is such a great power that they don't need any kind of top-down approach, but they just do it. They can very quickly, very ad hoc organize their opinion, organize their protest. And that's a very, very great movement. And this should change politics, really. So this should change structures and see there's such a high power, so use this.
But you know, if you see the German politicians, I think most of them are a bit mentally offline. How would you change it as an IT advisor in the Social Democratic Party? What's your plan?
We heard that, for example, Angela Merkel says that the internet is Neuland, so it's a new territory for her. But I won't change anything because I can take the competitive advantage and just use it for me. It's great, huh?
So you won't change, but if after the election someone came on and say, "Oh, Gesche, be our internet minister," what would you change? What is your first idea?
One of the first things is I would have a coffee with Viviane Reding, who had the keynote yesterday, and fight for the revision of the EU data policy so that we have data protection, data security, because this needs really strong engagement on a European level. This is one thing. And the other is thing, when we are talking about coding in the elementary schools, this would be one part and one piece of the puzzle to promote media competencies. So how do I deal with online media? Because that's not just a new technology. It fundamentally changes how we learn, how we organize ourselves, how we communicate. And so this, thank you. And this is really something that people, so the teachers have to be aware about, that the families have to be aware how to, be a good partner in discovering the online world, and to teach everybody, also people in higher age, so senior citizens, so they have such a high potential of learning, of lifelong learning on the internet, so that they're so great. We just have to open the door and, teach them how to go through, let's say.
But what happens if people realize that the web or the internet isn't so democratic at all, if we see it now in the Snowden affair? What are you thinking as a politician? What are you thinking about this big data espionage of the NSA?
I think that this has to mark a turning point in data politics, because now we lose all of our naivete, so to believe in it won't happen anything or something. So we really have to fight for civil rights there. And this is something that we also have to stand up in Germany and on a European level. And I wonder why not more people go on the street and fight for their own kind of personal space, their privacy, and their data protection. And this is something that we have to create also as a societal discourse, that what is my data and what are my rights concerning my data. And we have to have a kind of long roadmap how we want to develop a framework of a free and exploratory internet to save this kind of space, because it's such a great space, and this is what we need as a democracy.
And in your party, it's a social democratic, nearly conservative party, I would say. How are you addressing this topic? Is there an awareness for this big problem?
Very much so. We have a lot of discussions in the last days also how to react on this. And for us as net politicians and people who vote for the network society, it's a great time actually, because now we have really power to change things. And this thing of participation is very much also on the minds of my colleagues, that they say to get people in, also from the young generation, who say today politics is nothing that matters for me, so I'm not attached to it. So to open up ways of that you can vote in and come in and get in to discuss on certain topics. And this is a possibility that we have through a democratic online platform, that we want to involve more in political action.
What do you think about cryptography? Should we initiate a cryptography databases for everyone?
I think this is one of the tools that we can use, but I hope that in future we won't need it, because in a way it's our task for politicians to set the stage that you can be online without having just everything encrypted. But one very concrete thing is that we should think about in the European Union whether we need encryption for the internet backbones, so that if the NSA or anybody wants to, read our data, if it is encrypted, then it's at least a bit harder to do so. So really set symbols and signs that we don't accept that our privacy is violated in that way.
So my last question, if someone offers you the job as an internet minister in Germany, would you take it?
Of course! Of course, of course! I will.
Thank you.